Again, going back to that assumption that he made originally when he profiled a 17-year-old boy that had Skittles. That's the crime he committed that evening. Skittles that he didn't even steal from 7-Eleven. He legitimately bought. You saw the videotape. He wasn't instilling fear into that clerk over there because he was wearing a hoodie. But somehow, this man right here became suspicious of a 17-year-old kid who's wearing a hoodie.
Back with us, Lisa Bloom, Faith Jenkins, and Marcia Clark. Marcia, he seemed to be trying to drill home the point. Trayvon Martin did nothing that night to deserve his death, beginning with the 7-Eleven and everything he was doing before he encountered George Zimmerman.
Right, and it's a really important point that he's making here. In other words, Trayvon Martin is the victim. Trayvon Martin was going about his business. He went to the liquor store to get iced tea, get Skittles for his nephew, and he was zoned in on going to watch the All-Star game. He's talking to Rachel Jeantel, hey, make sure the game is on. He's going about his business very innocently and doing nothing wrong, and certainly not engaged in any kind of behavior that would justify suspicion. You can see he's focused on getting home. It's a rainy night. He's not around, he's not scoping out the neighborhood and trying to find a place to burglarize. And that's the point of what the prosecutor was saying, and it's a good one, because somebody who is zoned in, who's zooming in on getting home, watching the All-Star game, getting the Skittles to his nephew, is not someone who's casing the joint or looking to get into a fight. And so if that's the case, then who started this fight? George Zimmerman. And
to the point of what happened in that fight, and we don't have George Zimmerman taking the witness stand to testify or to get cross-examined, and we obviously cannot have Trayvon Martin. The prosecution went to the medical evidence and blood stain. Where is the blood? Why is there no blood on Trayvon Martin's hands? Let's listen to this particular piece of it about Dr. DeMaio.
Do you recall one of the things we talked about at some point with one of the witnesses, I think it was Dr. DeMaio, a very impressive, distinguished doctor, about this photograph the defense keeps parading? Recall what I did? I said, what do you expect? Blood. And I'm going to show you the photographs. Not just at the medical examiners because they're saying, oh, that Dr. Bao, he's incompetent, he didn't know what he was doing. No, I'm going to show you the photographs at the scene, which show what? No blood in his hands. Now they're going to say, oh, it was raining that night. Wow. And I guess the blood on the defendant's head just stuck there, right? But on the victim, they just kind of vanished.
Lisa Bloom, if there was blood on Trayvon Martin's hands, this would be such a different case.
That's true. Actually, I think this is a weak point for the prosecution because George Zimmerman was immediately taken into custody and photographed, and Trayvon Martin's remains were left there for several hours. And I think it's been pretty clearly established in this case that the evidence collection procedures were poor. Trayvon Martin's hands were not bagged. His fingernails were not necessarily all scraped. If they were scraped with the same implement. Some of the evidence was kept in a plastic bag, even though it was wet, so that the biological material degraded. I mean, there's really no question about that. And the absence of evidence is not evidence. So I didn't think the prosecution did particularly well on that score.
But no trace of blood, no trace of DNA. And the rain washed it away. That is the weakest excuse and argument. It's just not believable. George Zimmerman did not sustain the beating he claims he sustained at the hands of Trayvon Martin.
How did he get the injuries on his face if he didn't get punched in the face? That has never been explained.
Maybe he said 25 to 30 times.
Okay, but if we're going to concede that he got punched in the face, then why are we spending so much time talking about Trayvon Martin's hands? Admit that he got punched in the face and deal with that. And the prosecution didn't do that.
I don't think they're shying away from it. There's contact there. He has blood on him. The fact is, George Zimmerman embellished the severity of the beating because he wanted to justify shooting Trayvon Martin. He did not get beat in the face 25 to 30 times. His head did not get repeatedly slammed in the concrete. He does not have the injuries to sustain that. No one believes that he was beaten that way.
Let's
And here's the thing.
Go ahead,
No,
Marsha.
okay. Yeah, here's the thing, and I agree with you, Faith, because here's the thing. You would expect to find some trace when you break a nose or you bloody a nose. Noses bleed like crazy. By the way, so do head wounds. Bleed like crazy. And so there is enough blood to have gotten on Trayvon Martin if indeed he had the kind of contact George Zimmerman was describing, with the repeated pounding into the pavement and holding his head and shoulders the way he had to. Some blood would be on him, and some of it, at least trace amounts, would have been found somewhere on him. Rain or no rain, collection or no collection, it's not that hard to detect blood. And the fact that they found none is significant.
But they didn't do any blood detecting. They didn't do luminol at the scene. I mean, the prosecution experts had to acknowledge that. That's a problem for the state.
Okay, let's hold it there. Lisa, Faith, Marshall, we're going to be back with more. Up next, a lawyer for Trayvon Martin's family reacts to the prosecution's closing argument, and later, a look at the jury that will decide George Zimmerman's guilt or his not guilt. People say innocence. We do not have a finding of innocence in America. The teleprompter incorrectly said innocence, so I have to just adjust that a bit. Be back.